Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is the place where we take all that raw material of global change and really try to distill it down to what you need to know.
And today's topic is a big one.
It really is. We are strapping in for a critical look at the force that is fundamentally reshaping our world, maybe faster than any technology in history. Artificial intelligence.
The pervasive nature of it is just astonishing. I mean, it's no longer some niche subject for tech people.
Yeah, not at all.
It's basically become the underlying operating system for so much of modern life.
Exactly. So our mission today is to take this stack of sources that really zeroes in on AI's influence and pull out the essential insights. We want to see how it's actively, reshaping education, labor, and living.
And we're aiming for clarity and balance here.
Right, because the influence is always dual-sided. It brings incredible opportunity, but also just immense systemic pressure.
That duality is crucial. And it's especially important because these three areas, education, jobs, and daily life, you just can't look at them in isolation.
They're all connected.
Deeply. The sources all highlight that this isn't siloed. A change in what we teach students, for example, it immediately impacts the skills available for the job market.
And then the tools created by that labor market, they end up redefining our daily routines.
It's an interconnected feedback loop.
It is. So our roadmap is pretty clear. We're going to tackle the influence on these three areas one by one.
And really focus on those trade-offs.
Yes, the innovations pushing us forward and the structural challenges that we have to overcome to actually capitalize on them.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with how AI is changing learning itself. For you, the listener, the learner, this is probably the most immediate area of interest.
Right.
So how is AI altering that fundamental process of gaining knowledge? Not just making it faster, but, fundamentally different.
Well, what's fascinating is that AI is basically shifting the unit of education from the standardized classroom curriculum to the individual student. And there's a clear advantage here, a real innovation. This new tech is providing these vastly adaptive and personalized learning experiences.
So when we say personalized learning, let's get specific. It's more than just a digital textbook, right? I mean, how does the technology actually adapt?
It uses something called adaptive learning systems, or ALS. And they're based on just vast amounts of data. These systems can dynamically generate content. They can adjust difficulty in real time.
Based on how the student is doing.
Exactly. Based on their performance in these little micro-assessments. It creates instantaneous feedback loops. So instead of waiting for a big unit test, the AI spots a knowledge gap, let's say, in quadratic equations, and it instantly generates, 10 targeted practice problems until the student gets it.
That would improve retention massively, but it also means assessment has to change completely.
Completely.
If the AI is constantly testing and adapting, what happens to the big, high-stakes final exam?
That is one of the huge structural challenges. The sources suggest we're moving very quickly toward a crisis in traditional assessment. Yeah, because if a student can use a powerful generative model to produce a flawless research paper in like 2 minutes, then assessing content recall is basically meaningless.
So the focus has to shift away from what you know.
Toward what you can do with what you know.
Exactly.
And that means the role of the human teacher also goes through this massive transformation. If the AI is handling the routine stuff, the knowledge transmission, the personalized drills, what does the educator become?
They shift. They go from being a content deliverer to a high-level facilitator, a mentor, a coach.
Okay.
The human teacher's value is in fostering what the machines can't. Complex critical thinking, ethical reasoning, abstract problem solving, deep collaborative skills.
So the goal of education changes.
It's no longer rote mastery. The goal is teaching students how to effectively manage, audit, and use these incredibly powerful cognitive tools.
Right. And the counter-argument, the systemic cost, is that this sounds great in theory, but it assumes every school has the funding, the infrastructure, the trained staff to do this equitably. Absolutely. The structural challenge of just implementing this is huge. We're seeing a really significant divide emerge.
A new digital divide.
Not just based on access to devices, but access to high-quality, auditable AI content. And on top of that, there's the need for both teachers and students to quickly pick up advanced digital literacy.
It's not just about using the tool.
No. It's about critically evaluating the output, understanding the limitations, the biases that are baked into the algorithmic systems they're learning from. That's a whole new kind of digital citizenship.
So it forces us to teach the very skills that machines currently can't master. And those skills are exactly what the future labor market is demanding,
Precisely.
which leads us perfectly into the next segment.
The workforce.
Here's where it gets really interesting and often pretty contentious: the workforce. The sources emphasize AI's definitive role in reshaping labor. So what are the dominant influences on jobs, both for the existing workforce and, for future generations?
This is where we see the most immediate and profound economic shifts. And the scale of it is, it's just difficult to grasp. There's a clear advantage, of course. AI is generating massive efficiencies and productivity gains through automation. It's transforming entire industries. We're talking huge savings, accelerated innovation.
But the popular narrative, it always focuses entirely on displacement, the fear of the machine taking the job.
Right.
But the sources, they actually showed a much more complex picture about job creation, especially in these new high-value categories.
Precisely. Automation certainly displaces routine tasks. Think data entry, simple contract review, repetitive manufacturing steps. But this tech wave, it also simultaneously creates entirely new economic value chains.
Because you need people to run the machines.
You need human capital to support, to monitor, and to develop these AI systems.
So can you give us some specific examples of those high-value jobs that just didn't exist a few years ago?
Oh, certainly. We're seeing massive growth in areas like prompt engineering, where the value is knowing how to get the best, most targeted output from a generative AI.
Okay.
Then you have roles like LLM fine-tuning specialists and AI infrastructure architects. These are the people who build and manage the enormous computational resources needed to run these models.
And these are roles that require the exact creative and critical thinking skills we were just saying need to be cultivated in education.
It all connects. The nature of work is fundamentally changing. It's moving away from the execution of standardized tasks.
And towards the management and strategic direction of intelligent systems. That's a really crucial distinction.
It is. The trade-off, however, is that you have acute displacement in those sectors that rely on predictable tasks.
The other side of the coin.
Right. The counterargument is that the jobs being created are often fewer in number, and they require dramatically different, much higher level skills than the jobs that are lost. And that creates a significant structural mismatch.
And that kind of mismatch, it requires a systemic intervention. You can't just say, oh, the market will figure it out.
You can't.
The sources really emphasize the urgent need for broad economic reskilling.
That is the immense cost of this shift. The sources are calling for significant structural changes in skills training, broad reskilling and upskilling initiatives across the entire economy.
We're talking about millions of workers having to fundamentally pivot their core competency mid-career.
Mid-career, often within just 5 to 10 years, simply to stay relevant.
That's a continuous state of adaptation. It completely redefines what job security even means.
It is the new baseline. The deep dive materials suggested this continuous adaptation is just the new reality.
Yeah.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, you see that AI demands a population that can pivot its core skill set every few years. And it also creates a new layer of workforce management, algorithmic management.
What does that mean?
Well, workers in logistics, the gig economy, and increasingly even white-collar jobs are being managed, monitored, and assessed not by human supervisors, but by these opaque AI systems that set targets and enforce discipline.
Wow. So the productivity gains are there, but they come at the cost of traditional worker agency.
Exactly.
That's a powerful transition from the office floor to being managed by the algorithm.
It is.
So what does this all mean for the average person beyond the school desk and the changing office? Let's pivot to the source's final area, the influence on living, our day-to-day routine, our home life.
This is maybe the most subtle yet most pervasive area of influence. And there's a clear advantage, of course. New technology is dramatically increasing convenience and accessibility.
Okay.
We're talking about services, from health monitoring to finance, energy management, that are becoming highly customized and proactively managed by intelligent systems.
That hyper-personalization, that's the promise of the smart home, the personalized app ecosystem, and it feels almost magical until you realize you're relying entirely on a black box to function.
That is the key trade-off. On the other hand, this convenience raises these profound societal questions, particularly around data security and dependency.
Dependency.
Yes. When an AI determines something as crucial as your mortgage eligibility or your access to a certain healthcare specialist, or even just manages your transportation, We are becoming increasingly dependent on algorithmic systems for crucial life decisions.
We've all had that minor panic when our GPS fails, but
Mm-hmm.
but imagine that principle applied to core financial or health systems. The risk isn't just a malfunction.
No, it's the systemic vulnerability of reliance.
Right.
Exactly. The influence here is forcing us to establish new norms for technology use, especially regarding the inherent opacity of these systems.
The black box problem again?
The sources point out that when a crucial decision is made by an AI, and that decision introduces some unintended bias, let's say based on proxies for race or income buried in the training data, that lack of transparency creates a massive barrier to accountability.
So the need for auditable, transparent code. That becomes a civil rights issue, especially in crucial areas like finance and healthcare.
It does. We are, in real time, trying to establish the boundaries between human choice and algorithmic mandate. The convenience comes with a cost,
Reduce human agency.
and increased reliance on systems we can't fully interrogate. This requires us to cultivate a kind of skepticism and demand what some new regulations are calling for, explainable AI.
We need to know the why.
We need to know the why behind the automated decision, especially when it impacts someone's livelihood or their well-being.
That was comprehensive. Okay, let's bring these three areas together now.
The feedback loop.
Right. The education segment is preparing students for the labor market, and the labor market is creating the tools that define our daily life. The key takeaway from the sources isn't just fleeting change, it's comprehensive, integrated reshaping.
Precisely. These three elements are functioning as a continuous loop. The AI-driven labor market dictates the skills required from education,
And those trained individuals then develop the tech that gets further integrated into our lives.
which then generates new data streams that refine the AI, demanding a change in skills, and the whole cycle just accelerates.
It sounds like both for institutions and for individuals, adaptation is the ultimate price of admission for modern life. There's no opting out.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you see that the pervasive influence of AI across education, labor, and living means that adaptation is no longer optional. It is a continuous, relentless requirement. This constant state of technological flux is what defines the modern condition. The critical question isn't if we can keep up, but how we sustain that continuous adaptation without losing, without losing foundational human qualities.
We've seen how AI influences everything, how we learn, how we earn, and how we live. The tools are here, the economic shift is well underway, and our cultural norms are being rewritten, it feels like, daily.
They are.
And as we close this deep dive, we want to leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over. Since the source material clearly shows that AI is simultaneously reshaping and integrating all three facets of life, education, labor, and living, this raises an important question for you. Beyond simply keeping up with technology, what single foundational human quality must we cultivate most fiercely to thrive in this state of constant integrated reshaping?